Hey guys, Paul here from familywheels.ca. Thanks for tuning in to another car review for your growing family. And today I'm looking at the brand new 2016 Honda Pilot, the largest in their SUV lineup and a complete redesign for this year as well. I thought it was a great time to take the Pilot out because my folks were coming into town. I knew I needed a little bit more capacity because we were going on a road trip, about 1,000 kilometers out to BC and back. 4 adults, 1 kid in a child seat, a big dog, and all the gear that goes along with it. So I wanted to see if this could stack up, whether we could cram all those people and things into there and how it would do. Another great thing about the Pilot is that my father-in-law has been driving one for over a decade now. He's had a couple of them, the more boxy previous second generation that came just before this one. He has it right now. I want to get him in here and see what the new Pilot is like for him as well, because he's a very loyal owner of this particular model. I'm at the car wash because 1,000 kilometers in a car with a family and dusty gravel roads is certainly enough to get it dirty, but it also meant that my hands got dirty in this thing. I'll give you details on how it fared with all of our standardized tests and all the rest coming up. You want to see the size of these bags? The new Pilot is meant to compete with the likes of the Ford Explorer, the Nissan Pathfinder, the Toyota Highlander, just to name a few, and you can get into one for about $35,500, but that price climbs up to the touring package that I'm in here today, which is over $50,000 at the end of the day. What I like about this car is that it has some pretty solid base features on all of the trim levels that are available to you, including automatic climate control, a rear backup camera, heated seats in the front, that's nice for winters, a push button start, and a remote start as well, also great for Canadian winters. But one thing that I don't like, speaking of driving around in the snow, is the fact that the all-wheel drive system in this car is not standard. You're going to have to spend a few $1,000s on top of the base price to get all-wheel drive. I don't know why you would buy a car like this without it. Some of the other features that aren't going to come standard for you on this include LED headlamps, a automatic lift rear tailgate, leather seats, and just the cocoon of safety features that are around me here today in this touring package. Things like rear cross traffic alerts, so that as you're pulling out of a parking space, if a car is zipping along behind you, you'll get a warning to say hold up until this car passes. The car will also brake for you with collision mitigation, so if you're flying along the road and you're not applying brakes quickly enough and there's a vehicle coming up rather quickly on you, the Pilot will brake on your behalf. And then also the lane keeping assist system. This was in the Acura that I reviewed last week, and it's a little bit of a disconcerting idea because the car will steer for you a little bit as you're driving along. It senses the lines on the road, and if you stray from those lines, the car will also kind of fight you a little bit and draw you back toward the center of the lane. Not something I particularly love in all circumstances because it is a little bit eerie, but on days when you're driving along the highway and maybe not, sort of going along a windy country road and having fun, well, it can be a nice opportunity to have something like that. Now, speaking of having fun, I wasn't sure how good this car would be for zipping around those windy mountain roads in BC because it is a 3.5-liter V6 engine, the same engine that was in that Acura RDX that I was reviewing with you last week. I wasn't sure if it would be enough, but man, this car feels really sporty, especially when you do pop it into sport mode down here or use the paddle shifters on the steering wheel. That's an option here on the touring trim that I'm in today. It's a really fun car to drive. And you know what? The 1,000 kilometers of driving that I've done in this car this week, with some fun mountain driving as well, I've averaged about 9.8 liters per 100 kilometers. That's not that bad for a vehicle of this size. Obviously, if you're going to be driving around the city a lot, those numbers are going to dive pretty quickly. Honda figures you could probably get about 13 liters per 100 kilometers with city driving. But in terms of a highway driver and its sportiness, I was actually really impressed. The new Pilot looks much sleeker from the outside, and when you come inside, it's the same kind of thing. I think that it's very sleek and intuitive. It makes a lot of sense all over the dashboard here. I like the infotainment system. It's the new infotainment system for Honda, not unlike the one that's in the new Honda Fit, and I think that it makes a lot of sense. It's very clear. Some people complain about the fact that there's not an old school dial for the volume control, but I mean, come on guys, it's just a touch button right here. It's part of the touch screen, and it's still very easy to use. One thing that's a little bit weird about this infotainment system though is that the touchscreen marks up way more easily with my fingerprints than any other system I've ever used. I don't know what it is about this surface, but after using it 5 or 6 times, it just was so marked up and greasy. I had to take a rag to it. It was just grossing me out. A couple other little beefs about the driving experience. First up is the anti-idle system that the new Pilot has. A lot of cars are having this now, so when you pull up to a stop sign or a stoplight and apply the brakes, the engine will actually turn off. So you're saving fuel and you're not sitting there idling unnecessarily. And that's totally fine. I like that system, but it's a bit slow to respond here in the Pilot. So when the light turns green and it's my turn to go, I do feel like I'm sitting around just a split second too long, and there's a bit of a delay there. The other thing that kind of bothers me about the interior here is the steering wheel. It's really cluttered. It has a lot of different buttons on it, and it means that, when I want to go set my cruise control speed or adjust the volume on my infotainment system, that it's just a little bit more clunky than I'd like, and it kind of draws my eye away from the road while I'm hunting for what buttons to press. That's the whole idea. It's supposed to have buttons right at your hand and keep you looking at the road and avoiding you being distracted. So it would be nice if this was just a little bit cleaner here on the steering wheel. Something else that's new for the Pilot is a slightly longer length, 9 centimeters in total, and that means that the second and third passengers are going to get just a little bit more legroom. I still find it's just a bit tight though when I've adjusted the driver's seat the way I like it at 6'2". It means that a tall passenger back here in the second row is going to feel just a bit squished. Speaking of squished, in this touring edition that we're in here, my wife was sitting in the seat that I'm in right now, looking after our little guy sitting over here, and every time that I, as the driver, went to go get out of this vehicle, the driver's seat would slide back to give me easier access in and out of the driver's seat, but it meant that her legs, my wife's legs, got squished back here, and it was kind of an irritating feature in her mind. There is another thing that's a little bit irritating to me on the touring edition of the Pilot, and that's the fact that it's a 7-seater vehicle rather than an 8-seater. All of the other trims on the Pilot are going to give you 8 seats, but here on the touring edition we've got captain's chairs in the second row, and there's no seat here in the middle, and instead there's this kind of useless storage bin area. I would much rather have the ability to have 3 people in this row and not use the third row with 5 passengers than have to eat up some of that cargo space back there to fit a 5th person. One thing that I really do like about this trim that I'm in here today is this built-in sunscreen for little kids, the built-in DVD Blu-ray player that's right here for long road trips, and the fact that you only have to push one button right here to slide the seats forward to access the back row. It means that it's not quite as difficult to do. My mom was the one who was sitting in the third row throughout our road trip with the big dog back there. She's 5'5", said that it was comfortable for her, but you wouldn't want to be much bigger than that. Now the reason we get a big SUV like the Pilot is because we've got a lot of stuff and a lot of people to haul around. And looking at our standardized test here, it shows you that when the third row is down, that this Pilot can absolutely swallow the gear, because we have our standard amount of gear, a fold-up stroller, a couple bags of groceries, a ball, a diaper bag, and a backpack, and that barely left a dent here. So it was time for the stress test, which was our dog, a rather large dog at that, and she fit without problems. So then the extra ultimate stress test is this tricycle right here, also fit without issue. So great if you don't need that third row a lot. However, as soon as you put the third row up, which is what we did for our road trip, all of a sudden cargo capacity just plummets. It was really tight for us. So if you need that little bit of extra space, place and you're going to use the third row all the time, know that it's going to be a little bit of a squeeze for you, and maybe it's time to start thinking about, hey, getting into one of those minivans or a slightly larger SUV, because it is going to be a pinch. All right, let's go on to the yogurt test now, where I smear a bunch of yogurt onto the seat to see how it would stack up for those family spills. Now, you can get the Pilot with 3 different seat materials: cloth for the low-end trims, smooth leather for the mid-level trims, and then in this Touring Edition, perforated leather seats because they're ventilated. This can be a real pain for cleanup. You can see here I've already put the yogurt in place. I've smeared it in and I cannot get it out of there because those perforations just suck it up, and it's a real pain. The other thing I've done is put a rear-facing child seat in place, and that gives me 11 inches of legroom up front. Not bad, not terrible, also not the best I've seen. Gives me enough room at 6'2" to sit up here comfortably, though, something that is important for a vehicle like this, of this size, that's geared toward family life.
Where's the gear shift?
It's down here. Another different change. You press D.
And what's the S?
Sport mode.
Oh.
I know. So generally speaking, from the look to the feel to the way it drives, how do you think it compares to your 2014 Pilot?
Well, you know, the first thing is, from a tactile point of view, this feels a lot more comfortable. You know, it definitely seems higher end than the one I have. I don't know if that's true or not, but it feels a little more luxury.
Yeah, they've worked on their fit and finish a lot for this.
So it looks a lot nicer, but it also rides a lot more like a car than a truck, if that's fair.
Even compared to your present Pilot.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's, you know, my present Pilot, it does. It feels like you're driving a truck, and I tell people, go out and get in the truck. This feels more like a car.
Yeah.
And just the layout. I mean, it looks less like an SUV and more like a sedan.
So would I recommend the new Pilot for family life? Absolutely. I think it's got a lot going for it. Not the least of which are its sleek new looks. It's more fuel efficient, it's a little bit bigger, and despite all of that, it's still a lot of fun to drive. Add on top of that the fact that it does have a great safety rating. It can still tow about 5,000 pounds for towing around a utility trailer or a camper trailer, whatever. It is a nice option for families. Although there are a couple of things that I'd caution you on. If you are the kind of family that needs that third row all the time, rather than just for the occasional, bit of carpooling or family coming out to visit, it is going to be a bit of a squeeze for you for cargo capacity. There's just not that much once the third row goes up. And the other thing is, to be honest with you, I just don't think that I'd go with this highest end touring trim. I don't like the fact that you don't have 3 seats across in the second row in this touring version. You get that on all the others. I also just can't stand those perforated seats because they are hard to clean. But all in all, I think a really great reboot from Honda here with this new Pilot. Next week on the program, we're looking at the brand new 2016 Jeep Renegade. Shares a lot of the same underpinnings of that Fiat 500X that I was reviewing a couple of weeks ago. We'll see how it stacks up. Until then, make sure to subscribe to the channel, and you can always find us on the website familywheels.ca. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in about 7 days.